So normally when there's a raid, someone is indicted and arrested within a matter of days, certainly no more than weeks. This was a unique case because it took 6 months from the March raids of Diddy's Los Angeles and Miami homes for him to be arrested. I think, and this is my speculation, but it's strong speculation, is that prosecutors were concerned that the victims in this case would go sideways at trial for one of two reasons. First, Diddy is reportedly worth $1 billion. Many of these victims have sued him. He could try to pay them off through civil settlements to buy their silence. Second, Diddy could intimidate the victim witnesses. They may be scared to testify at trial. So I think the reason it took so long for this indictment to come down is that the U.S. Attorney's Office wanted to put these victims before the grand jury, have them testify under penalty of perjury, lock in their testimony so something doesn't happen at trial. I don't think it took 6 months for the agents to review the electronic evidence that was seized from the homes. And this is the type of case that will certainly go to trial for a couple of reasons. There's really no deal that the U.S. Attorney's Office can offer, and there's certainly not one that Diddy will accept. It would involve decades in federal prison. We're talking about mandatory minimum sentences of 10 years for both the drug charges and the sex trafficking. So we know that Diddy has fought charges before. There were state charges, there were gun-related, the nightclub shooting with J-Lo, but he's going to dig in his heels, and this case is going to trial. So if you're prosecutors, you really want to make sure that your evidence is bulletproof before you go down that route. That's why I think it took so long. The shock and awe of the freak-offs was something that I think members of the public are going to take notice of. You know, there's cameras, there's videos, there's lighting, there's lots of drugs, there's even IVs after the drugs. So you have these commercial sex workers who are flown in from out of state and they're forced to participate in these sex acts. And I think that was expected. Some of the detail about the 1,000 bottles of baby oil, that was something that was surprising. But a lot of this was what we expected because when Cassie first filed her lawsuit in November, she talked about being forced to participate in these sex acts and Diddy videotaping her. So a lot of that was consistent, but the level of detail in the indictment and then the force that was used upon these women, these victims, to continue participating in these acts and afterwards to not cooperate with law enforcement. I think that was my biggest takeaway reading the indictment. So under the RICO statute, it doesn't have to be the mob or the cartel or even a street gang for it to be a criminal enterprise. It's loosely defined as any association of two or more people. So even though those other people haven't been named in the indictment, prosecutors do need to show some sort of criminal organization. And obviously, Diddy's entourage, if you believe the allegations, did help procure these sex workers, did help set up the cameras and the light and change the bed sheets. And so they were involved. And under the RICO statutes, it's a very powerful statute because anyone who participates in a RICO conspiracy, they're on the hook for all the substantive crimes committed in furtherance of the conspiracy. So that's my lawyer way of saying if someone even set up the IV or got the baby oil, they're on the hook for sex trafficking as a matter of criminal law, even if they didn't actually participate in the sex act. So the law is pretty clear, and the Supreme Court has affirmed the really broad reach of RICO, and that's why it's such a powerful statute. So the individuals that witnessed this conduct or even helped, they should really be concerned because if they don't cooperate, they may face the very real possibility of being charged as co-defendants. Sex trafficking involves sex, the transportation of someone for the purpose of sex, but importantly, force, fraud, or coercion. That's what differentiates consensual sexual activity between adults and sex trafficking. Now, if minors are involved, that is per se trafficking because minors, under the law, they can't consent and force is presumed. But there are no minor allegations in this case, even though many people expected them. So it appears that we're talking about victims who are adults. So in this case, the trafficking is the force compelling them to participate in these sex acts, whether they're provided drugs, whether they're compelled because of threats of force, guns, actual physical violence. That's what separates consensual sex with trafficking. This can go in one of two directions: more defendants or more charges. More charges would be other individuals who have come forward, or gun charges. But really, I think what we're looking at here are potentially more defendants, especially anyone who tried to dissuade a witness from testifying. I think that's what's going to be key here. And one of the reasons that this case is delayed. Now, obviously, very different. I'm not trying to compare the two, but one of the big issues in the R. Kelly case was that he tried to prevent the victims from coming forward. He tried to get them to change their testimony. And it appears, according to this indictment, that Diddy tried to do the same, and there's some recorded calls of him doing so. Diddy came to New York because he knew he was going to get arrested. He had no right to self-surrender. It's not genuine for his lawyers to demand that, given the severity of the charges. If he were offered that opportunity, it would just play into the theory that he's getting special treatment because he's a rich and famous celebrity. No criminal defendant who's charged with sex trafficking, drug trafficking, is allowed to just appear in court. That's just not how it works.